Your mind is the first battlefield you must conquer, not the world, not other people, not your past, your mind. If you lose here, you lose everywhere. Toxic thoughts are like silent assassins, small, invisible, and patient. They wait for the moment you hesitate, and then they strike. They make you doubt your worth. They make you fear imaginary problems. They make you weaker than you actually are. And Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. A person ruled by their thoughts is a servant, not a sovereign. So listen carefully. Your mind is not a storage room for poison. It is a throne, and only one ruler can sit on it, you. But to sit on that throne, you must clear out every parasite thought that whispers, "You're not enough. You're too late. You'll never change." Those whispers are lies. Lies designed to keep you small. Lies designed to keep you controllable. Here is the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who judges them. The weak man reacts to every thought. The powerful man filters them, discards them, and chooses only the ones that sharpen him. From this moment forward, I want you to embrace a new identity, a colder identity. The identity of someone who does not get pulled by every emotion, every doubt, every memory. Say the empowering phrase in the comments right now, "My mind obeys me." This is the first truth. Clear your battlefield. Claim your throne. Section 2. The truth about mental noise. Your mind is not loud because life is difficult. Your mind is loud because you have allowed too many unqualified voices to speak inside it. Thoughts from your past. Thoughts from people who never built anything. Thoughts from fear, insecurity, shame, regret. They create a constant inner noise that destroys clarity. Machiavelli warned that a ruler surrounded by unworthy advisors loses control. The same applies to you. If the advisors inside your head are weak, emotional, and irrational, your decisions will be weak, emotional, and irrational. So let me tell you something you have never heard this directly. Most of your thoughts do not belong to you. They were planted there. By society, by critics, by your own wounded moments. Mental noise is not a sign of madness. It is a sign of inner disorganization. A king who cannot control the voices in his court eventually falls. A man who cannot control the voices in his mind eventually breaks. You need order, structure, hierarchy. You need to separate the thoughts that serve you from the thoughts that sabotage you. And yes, this requires brutality. You must become mentally ruthless. Any thought that doesn't strengthen you must be interrogated, exposed, and removed. Ask yourself, does this thought make me stronger? Does it make me calmer? Does it make me more strategic? If the answer is no, then it is an enemy thought. And enemy thoughts are not to be entertained. They are to be executed. This is Machiavellian mental discipline, to treat your mind like a kingdom worth defending. Not every visitor deserves entry. Not every idea deserves attention. Not every doubt deserves energy. Clarity begins when you stop negotiating with toxic thoughts and start ruling over them with an iron mind. Understand this deeply. The mind does not clear itself naturally. It obeys the one who stands guard. If you let your mind run wild, it will create chaos. But if you stand at the gates with authority, the chaos dies. The noise fades, focus returns, inner peace becomes possible. And that is your responsibility now. You are no longer a wanderer inside your mind. You are the ruler of it. Section 3. Silence, the weapon that destroys toxic thoughts. Silence is not the absence of noise. Silence is the presence of control. And if you truly want to clear your mind from toxic thoughts, you must first understand why silence is feared by weak men and embraced by powerful ones. Weak men avoid silence because silence forces them to face themselves. It exposes the lies they've been telling themselves for years. It reveals their lack of discipline, their hidden insecurities, their unhealed wounds. They fear the quiet because the quiet holds a mirror. But strong men, Machiavellian men, walk straight into silence because silence is where they sharpen themselves. Silence is where they regain clarity. Silence is where every toxic thought is dragged into the open and confronted. Your mind becomes toxic when you drown in a constant flood of distraction, endless voices, non-stop stimuli, constant scrolling, pointless conversations, emotional reactions, mental clutter. Your brain becomes overfed but undernourished. And toxic thoughts thrive in overstimulation. They multiply in chaos. They grow in noise. But when you remove the noise, those toxic thoughts can no longer hide. They become visible. They weaken. They lose their power. That is why silence is not just calmness. It is psychological dominance. Machiavelli believed in strategic withdrawal. A ruler who constantly reacts, constantly responds, constantly engages, eventually becomes predictable and exploitable. But the ruler who retreats into silence at will gains the ultimate advantage, self-control. From silence, you see what others cannot. From silence, you notice the traps. From silence, you eliminate mental enemies before they become real enemies. To reclaim your inner peace, you must reclaim the quiet, not by running away from life, but by mastering the mental space within it. Toxic thoughts are loud because you have forgotten how to be still. Your mind has become addicted to stimulation. It's uncomfortable when things slow down. It panics when cycles stop spinning. But this panic is not real danger. It is the mind detoxing. It is the withdrawal of a brain used to noise. And once you pass through that discomfort, you enter a level of mental clarity that almost nobody around you has ever experienced. Silence teaches you which thoughts are real and which thoughts are illusions. Silence teaches you which fears deserve respect and which fears deserve destruction. Silence teaches you which emotions are signals and which emotions are traps. When you sit in silence, your mind begins organizing itself. Toxic thoughts lose their ability to manipulate you because they cannot hide behind distraction anymore. They cannot borrow energy from noise. They stand in front of you, exposed, unmasked, and weak. You begin to see how irrational so many of your worries truly are. You begin to realize that most of your stress was born from exaggeration, not reality. You begin to understand that the anxiety that felt overwhelming was nothing but a pattern your brain kept replaying. Clearing your mind is not a spiritual ritual. It is a tactical, cold, Machiavellian process of mental filtration. You detach from the noise so the truth can rise to the surface. And once you see the truth, toxic thoughts die. Why? Because toxic thoughts only survive in confusion. They depend on emotional fog. They need you blind, reactive, and overwhelmed. Silence removes their oxygen. Silence reduces their influence. Silence exposes them as powerless shadows. But here is the discipline most people never master. Silence must be intentional. You cannot simply sit still and expect clarity to appear. You must enter silence with authority. You must step into your mind like a ruler entering his throne room. You observe your thoughts without obeying them. You watch them without being pulled by them. And slowly, you realize a truth that will change the rest of your life. Your thoughts are not commands. They are possibilities, and you choose which ones become orders. Toxic thoughts lose their venom the moment you stop reacting to them. The moment you stop believing every idea your brain throws at you, the moment you detach from every impulsive emotion, you become unshakable. Silence trains you to do this. Silence strengthens your mental muscles. Silence teaches you the difference between noise and necessity. And once you master silence, clarity becomes your natural state. You begin to think deeply, strategically, calmly. You begin to notice opportunities before others see them. You begin to feel emotions without being controlled by them. You begin making decisions from strength rather than fear. This is the real inner peace, not softness and not passive calmness, but control, calmness with authority. Calmness rooted in discipline, not in avoidance. Silence is the weapon that destroys toxic thoughts because it removes their camouflage, it exposes their lies, it forces them into the open where they cannot survive. And when your mind becomes silent by choice, your life becomes powerful by design. Section 4. The dark origin of toxic thoughts. Most people try to clear their mind without understanding where their toxic thoughts actually come from. They think toxic thoughts appear out of nowhere. They think it's some mood or some phase or some random negativity. But Machiavelli would tell you a truth far sharper. Nothing destructive appears without a source. Toxic thoughts have roots. They have origins. They have entry points where they infiltrated your life and began corrupting your inner clarity. And until you trace them back to their source, they will keep returning. They will shape you, limit you, sabotage you again and again, because an enemy you do not identify is an enemy you can never defeat. Your toxic thoughts were not born inside you. They were planted there. From childhood, people gave you ideas about your worth, your intelligence, your future, your limitations. You absorbed insults, comparisons, judgments, fears, failures. Some became scars, some became beliefs, some became whispers that still haunt you today. When someone told you you weren't enough, that wasn't just a sentence, it became a seed. When someone mocked you, that wasn't just humiliation, it became a memory that still dictates your reactions. When someone doubted you, that wasn't just an opinion, it became an internal voice. These are the dark origins, external attacks that became internal echoes. But external sources are only one layer. The second layer is emotional vulnerability. Toxic thoughts attach themselves to moments when you were weak, when you were tired, heartbroken, overwhelmed, abandoned, or insecure. They enter during emotional chaos because chaos lowers your defenses. A wounded mind becomes an open gate. And once these thoughts enter, they blend in. They pretend to be your own thinking. They disguise themselves as your intuition, your gut, your logic. But in reality, they are fears from the past masquerading as wisdom. The third origin is repetition. Your mind remembers what it hears often. If you repeatedly replay a fear, it becomes a belief. If you repeatedly replay a failure, it becomes an identity. If you repeatedly replay someone's judgment, it becomes your inner voice. The brain doesn't question repetition, it adopts it. Toxic thoughts survive because you've rehearsed them without knowing. You've strengthened them by giving them attention, energy, emotion. You've fed the enemy without realizing it. And the fourth origin, the most painful, is self-betrayal. Toxic thoughts grow stronger every time you break your own standards. Every time you tell yourself you will do something and you don't. Every time you say you will change but you stay the same. Every time you promise discipline but indulge in weakness. These moments create internal fractures. They produce shame. Shame evolves into self-doubt. Self-doubt becomes a toxic loop. And once the loop starts, it tries to define you. You never finish anything. You're not disciplined. You always fail. You'll never become who you want to be. But here is the Machiavellian truth. None of these origins are permanent. None of them define you unless you allow them to. Toxic thoughts only survive because you've never hunted them down to the source. You've never shined a harsh, unforgiving light on where they began. You've been fighting shadows instead of destroying the root. So let's expose the roots. Let's tear open the ground and confront these origins with brutal clarity. The voices of the past were wrong. Their judgments came from their own weakness, not your worth. The emotional wounds were temporary events, not permanent realities. The repeated fears were habits, not truths. The self-betrayals were phases of immaturity, not your destiny. When you understand this, something powerful happens. Toxic thoughts lose their authority. They lose their story. They lose their credibility. You realize they are not prophecies. They are leftovers. Leftovers from people who hurt you, moments that broke you, emotions that overwhelmed you, and habits that drained you. They are relics, not realities. Machiavelli said a ruler must know the origin of every threat, because understanding its origin is the first step to destroying it. Now that you know the origins of your toxic thoughts, you can finally challenge them. You can finally question their authority. You can finally detach from them instead of assuming they represent truth. And once you detach, something shifts inside you. The poison loses its grip, the fog begins to fade, and you realize, maybe for the first time in your life, that the enemy in your mind was never you. It was never your nature. It was never your destiny. It was the voice of weakness, disguised as the voice of reality. Now that you've seen where toxic thoughts truly come from, you are ready for the next phase, the phase where you learn how to break them permanently. Section 5. The Art of Mental Detachment. How the Powerful Erase Toxic Thoughts. Detachment is not coldness. Detachment is not apathy. Detachment is not pretending you don't care. True detachment is the ability to see your thoughts without becoming your thoughts. It is the psychological separation between the observer and the internal noise. Machiavelli would call it the ruler stepping above the kingdom, seeing everything from a higher vantage point. And until you master this Machiavellian detachment, toxic thoughts will keep poisoning your life. They will keep dragging you into emotional spirals. They will keep pulling you into unproductive reactions. They will keep manipulating your identity. But once you detach, everything changes. Once you detach, toxic thoughts lose the ability to command you. Here is the core truth. A thought only has power when you emotionally react to it. Reaction is fuel. Reaction is energy. Reaction is what turns a passing idea into a belief. Detachment removes that fuel. Detachment starves the thought. Detachment turns a toxic belief into a powerless whisper. Most people make a fatal mistake. They try to fight toxic thoughts directly. They argue with them. They try to silence them. They try to replace them with positive affirmations. But this is the whole problem. Fighting a thought is still giving it attention. Fighting a thought is still reacting. Fighting a thought still makes it important. And anything you treat as important becomes stronger. So the more you fight the thought, the more power it gains. That's why so many people drown in anxiety, spirals, and self-doubt. They fuel the enemy every time they resist it. Detachment uses the opposite strategy. When a toxic thought appears, you do not fight it. You do not debate it. You do not accept it. You do not deny it. You simply observe it. You let it pass through your mind like a bird flying across the sky. You watch its shape. You see its movement. You understand its pattern, but you do not attach to it. You give it no emotional weight, and without emotional weight, the thought cannot grow. Without engagement, the thought cannot stay. Without resistance, the thought cannot return with force. This is not passivity. It is psychological dominance. This is how powerful men maintain clarity. They do not drown in their thoughts. They rise above them. They become the witness, not the prisoner. Detachment is also strategic because it gives you time. When you detach from a thought, you create a mental gap, a space where logic returns, where clarity enters, where your true identity speaks louder than your fears. Toxic thoughts lose their grip in that gap. They crumble in that gap. They reveal themselves as illusions. And this is where Machiavellian psychology becomes unstoppable. When you detach from a toxic thought, you regain the power to choose your response. You are no longer reacting impulsively. You are no longer acting from fear. You are no longer controlled by emotion. You become deliberate, strategic, composed, cold when necessary. You respond with strength instead of panic. You decide what to do rather than being dragged into mental chaos. Detachment makes your mind disciplined. Detachment makes your emotions obedient. Detachment makes your identity untouchable. But detachment requires one thing from you: self-respect. You must believe you are worthy of mental clarity. You must believe you do not deserve to be a slave to your own thoughts. You must believe that you are the ruler of your internal world. Without self-respect, detachment becomes impossible, because detachment requires the courage to step back and say, "This thought does not define me." You may not realize it, but every toxic thought is trying to convince you of two lies. First, that it represents reality. Second, that you must obey it. Detachment destroys both lies at once. Once you detach, you see toxic thoughts as what they truly are: mental noise, emotional leftovers, old programming, the ghosts of old wounds. None of them hold any real authority. None of them hold any real truth. They are shadows pretending to be facts. Detachment exposes this illusion and frees you from it. Think of it like this: a powerful ruler does not respond to every complaint in the kingdom. He chooses which matters deserve his attention. He ignores everything that doesn't serve his authority. You must treat your mind the same way. You must choose which thoughts deserve energy, and you must dismiss the rest. Dismissing a thought is not weakness, it is power. It is mental sovereignty. Detachment allows you to reclaim the mental space that toxic thoughts once occupied. The more you detach, the more space you create. And in that space, a new identity emerges. Calm, focused, sharp, strategic, unshakable. You begin to think clearly. You begin to act with purpose. You begin to trust yourself again. Most people will never understand this power because they are emotionally fused with their thoughts. They believe every fear. They obey every worry. They become every negative belief. They have no separation between thought and self. That is why they stay trapped. That is why their minds remain toxic. That is why they suffer. But you are not most people. You are learning the art of detachment. You are rising above the noise. You are reclaiming your mental throne. Master this art, and toxic thoughts will fade from your life. Not instantly, but inevitably. They will lose their influence. They will lose their sting. They will lose their hold on you, because a mind ruled from above is a mind that cannot be invaded from below. Section 6. The power of mental boundaries. Protecting your mind like a fortress. Most people obsess over physical boundaries: who can enter their home, who can touch their possessions, who can cross their personal space. But very few guard the most important territory they own: their mind. They allow anyone, anything, any distraction, any opinion to walk in freely and plant whatever seed it wants. That is why their minds become toxic. That is why their thoughts grow wild. That is why their peace collapses. A mind without boundaries becomes a kingdom without walls. It becomes vulnerable to invasion, corruption, manipulation, and chaos. If you want inner peace, clarity, and unshakable strength, you must build mental boundaries stronger than stone. You must become ruthless about what enters your mind and what stays out. Machiavelli taught that a ruler's power depends not only on his strength, but on his ability to prevent enemies from gaining access to the core of his kingdom. Your mind is your core. Your thoughts are your battleground. Your internal world is your throne room. And if you let unfiltered influence seep in, you compromise everything. The truth is brutal but liberating. Your mind became toxic only because you allowed too much nonsense to enter it. You consumed negativity from people who were broken inside themselves. You absorbed opinions from those who never built anything in life. You fed your mind with distractions instead of discipline. You spent hours drowning in content that weakened your confidence, heightened your insecurities, and amplified your doubts. Little by little, your mental gates became unguarded, and the toxic thoughts slipped in like thieves in the night. But here is the power you've forgotten. The mind becomes what it continually consumes. If you feed it noise, it becomes chaotic. If you feed it fear, it becomes anxious. If you feed it conflict, it becomes restless. But if you feed it structure, clarity, strategy, and discipline, it becomes a fortress. You must decide what your mind will be: a fragile hut or an impenetrable citadel. Mental boundaries begin with this principle. Not every person deserves access to you. Some people bring confusion, some bring envy, some bring drama, some bring weakness disguised as concern. Their words carry poison, their energy carries instability, their advice carries fear. Every conversation, every interaction, every message you entertain is either adding strength to your mind or draining it. The powerful protect their minds by limiting their exposure to anything that seeds doubt. They do not allow emotionally chaotic people to influence their decisions. They do not let the insecure dictate their standards. They do not let the envious shape their self-image. This is not cruelty, it is survival. The second boundary is control of information. Most people binge information without filtering it. They scroll endlessly, exposing themselves to anxiety-inducing content, unrealistic comparisons, and emotionally charged narratives. They watch people who mock their dreams, ridicule their ambition, or subtly reinforce their insecurities. They absorb news designed to manipulate fear. They follow influencers who preach weakness masked as positivity. And then they wonder why their mind feels heavy, confused, unfocused, and restless. You must become a curator of the information you consume. You must treat your attention as a weapon, not a toy. Your focus must never be given freely. It must be invested with precision. Learn to ask yourself, will this information strengthen me? Will it sharpen my mind? Will it increase my clarity or destroy it? Will this make me more dangerous or more distracted? If the answer is no, cut it out. Protect your mental ecosystem like a king guards his kingdom's borders. The third boundary is emotional discipline. Most toxic thoughts enter through emotional vulnerability. When you are angry, tired, stressed, lonely, or nostalgic, your defenses weaken. Thoughts you would normally dismiss suddenly feel real. Memories you buried suddenly surface. Insecurities you conquered return with force. Your mind opens its gates because it is exhausted. That is why emotional discipline is essential. You must recognize your vulnerable states and refuse to make decisions during them. You must learn to pause instead of react. You must master yourself before you attempt to master your life. The fourth boundary is solitude, not isolation. Solitude. Time alone is where your mind reorganizes itself. It is where your boundaries recharge. It is where your clarity sharpens. Powerful men use solitude as maintenance for the mind. Weak men avoid it because solitude confronts them with truth. But if you want a mind free from toxic thoughts, you must give it the space to detox. Spend time alone with your thoughts, not as their victim, but as their judge. The fifth boundary is identity. The strongest mental boundary in human psychology is knowing who you are. Toxic thoughts thrive when your identity is weak, undefined, or inconsistent. When you don't know who you are, every opinion hits you. Every judgment wounds you. Every failure becomes a prophecy. But when your identity is anchored in discipline, ambition, resilience, and self-respect, toxic thoughts hit a wall. They cannot enter. They cannot influence you. They cannot rewrite your script. To build this identity, you must define your internal code, your values, your standards, your non-negotiables. A man with a personal code becomes psychologically untouchable. He does not accept every thought. He does not react to every feeling. He does not bend to every emotion. His identity filters everything, and only the thoughts aligned with strength are allowed to stay. Once your mental boundaries are built, something remarkable happens. Your mind becomes quiet. Focus returns. Confidence grows. Decisions become easier. You stop overthinking. You stop spiraling. You stop doubting yourself. Toxic thoughts cannot survive in a fortified mind. They bounce off the walls and fade into irrelevance. This is the psychological structure of the powerful. Build it, and your mind becomes a place where only strength survives. Section 7. The war against internal weakness. Destroying the habits that feed toxic thoughts. If you want to clear your mind from toxic thoughts, you cannot stop at understanding their origins or building boundaries. You must go deeper. You must attack the internal weaknesses that keep those toxic thoughts alive, because toxic thoughts do not survive on their own. They feed on habits. They feed on patterns. They feed on behaviors that weaken you. And until you destroy these habits, your mind will always be vulnerable. Toxic thoughts will always find a way back in. Machiavelli warned that a ruler who tolerates internal corruption invites external ruin. The same is true inside your mind. If you tolerate weak patterns, those patterns will betray you. They will undermine your strength. They will open the gates for toxic thinking to return with even more power. The first weakness you must destroy is your addiction to overthinking. Overthinking is not intelligence, it is paralysis. It is the mind looping endlessly because it lacks direction. Overthinking exaggerates threats, magnifies doubts, creates imaginary outcomes, and feeds the illusion that thinking more equals solving more. But overthinking does not solve, it suffocates. Machiavellian minds think sharply, not endlessly. They think with precision, not fear. They make decisions, not spirals. You must train your mind to stop rehearsing the same thoughts. When the mind loops, break the pattern immediately. Breathe, redirect, act. The moment you interrupt the loop, the toxic thought loses momentum. The second weakness is emotional indulgence. People often drown because they let emotions dominate their internal world. They feel something negative and automatically assume it's truth. But emotion is not truth. It is a temporary signal. It is a chemical wave. It is a reaction, not a prophecy. Yet weak habits make you worship emotion. You replay heartbreak. You nurture self-pity. You dramatize small problems. You exaggerate failures. And every time you do this, toxic thoughts gain strength. You must kill emotional indulgence with discipline. Feel the emotion, acknowledge it, and then move forward. Do not bathe in it. Do not hold it. Do not let it anchor into your identity. The powerful feel emotions but remain unmoved by them. The third weakness is mental laziness. A lazy mind becomes toxic by default. When you do not train your mind with purpose, it will wander into fear, insecurity, and negativity. A mind without challenge turns against itself. That is why Machiavelli believed a leader must always stay active, sharp, and vigilant. You must train your mind the same way you train a muscle, repeatedly, intensely, strategically. Read things that strengthen you. Learn skills that sharpen you. Think thoughts that elevate you. Use your mind every day, and it will have no space left for toxic noise. The fourth weakness is procrastination. Nothing poisons the mind faster than avoiding what you know must be done. Every delay creates guilt. Every unfinished task creates mental friction. Every postponed responsibility becomes a weight in the back of your mind, and these weights accumulate until they turn into toxic thoughts. I'm lazy, I can't change, I'll always fall behind. But the truth is simple. Your toxic thoughts are often just the voice of regret. Action kills that voice. Action clears mental chaos. Action restores inner authority. When you do what needs to be done, especially when you don't feel like it, you reclaim psychological power. The fifth weakness is comparing yourself to others. Comparison is mental suicide. It kills peace. It kills confidence. It kills focus. It makes you chase illusions instead of purpose. It makes you judge your progress by someone else's highlight reel. Comparison feeds toxic thoughts like, you're behind, you're not good enough, you'll never catch up. But understand this, Machiavellian minds do not compare, they calculate. They focus on their path, their improvement, their strategy. They use others only as reference points, not as standards. You must kill comparison if you want mental freedom. The sixth weakness is inconsistency. One day you are disciplined. The next day you collapse. 1 week you wake up early. The next week you oversleep. 1 month you feel unstoppable. The next month you fall apart. Inconsistency fractures your self-image. It makes you doubt your own capability. It turns your mind into enemy territory. If you want to eliminate toxic thoughts, you must eliminate inconsistency, not by perfection, but by stability. You don't need extreme discipline, you need regular discipline. Consistent small actions build mental power faster than rare bursts of intensity. The seventh weakness is living without standards. When you lack personal principles, you become mentally chaotic. You tolerate nonsense. You accept disrespect. You entertain weak people. You follow impulses. You chase comfort. And when life becomes unstable, toxic thoughts thrive in the instability. You need standards, strong, non-negotiable standards. Standards for how you speak to yourself. Standards for what you allow into your mind. Standards for how you respond to fear. Standards for how you handle failure. When you raise your standards, toxic thoughts lose access to you. The eighth weakness is failing to confront your truth. Most mental toxicity comes from avoidance. You avoid your flaws. You avoid your insecurities. You avoid your wounds. You avoid your mistakes. And every moment you avoid them, they grow in the dark. They mutate. They twist themselves into toxic narratives about who you are. But when you confront your truth with honesty and cold awareness, the toxicity dies. The powerful do not hide from their flaws, they dominate them. They expose them, they transform them. The ninth weakness is lack of purpose. When your life lacks direction, your mind collapses inward. It becomes restless, anxious, unstable, vulnerable. Toxic thoughts become the default because there is nothing stronger to replace them. But when you have purpose, the mind aligns. The inner noise fades. The doubts weaken. Purpose gives you something to protect, something to build, something to fight for, and a mind that has something to fight for becomes unbreakable. Destroy these weaknesses and toxic thoughts will have nothing left to feed on. They will starve, they will shrink, they will die, because toxic thoughts only survive in a mind that is undisciplined, unintentional, and unprotected. Section 8. Rewiring the mind. Installing mental programs that make toxic thoughts impossible to survive. To clear your mind permanently, you cannot simply remove toxic thoughts. You must replace them with stronger, sharper, superior mental programs. A weak mind exposed to emptiness will eventually fall back into old patterns, but a mind reinforced with powerful inner systems becomes resistant to negativity. Machiavelli would say, "A vacated throne invites rebellion. A well-governed throne breeds loyalty." If you remove toxic thoughts but fail to install stronger truths, the old enemy will return. But if you construct a new mental architecture, toxic thoughts will have nowhere to live. Rewiring the mind begins with identity programming. Your identity is the operating system that determines which thoughts you accept and which you reject. If your identity is weak, negative thoughts will feel believable. If your identity is strong, those same thoughts will feel absurd. That's why you must build a personal identity anchored in strength, discipline, clarity, and ambition. You must define who you are so sharply that toxic thoughts cannot survive the contrast. When your identity says, "I am a disciplined person," you reject thoughts of procrastination. When your identity says, "I am a calm strategist," you reject thoughts of emotional chaos. When your identity says, "I am someone who finishes what I start," you reject thoughts of quitting. Your identity becomes a filter, a shield, a weapon. The second program you must install is mental minimalism. Most people confuse intelligence with complication. They overload their mind with too much information, too many tasks, too many desires, too many opinions. The result? Overwhelm, confusion, anxiety, toxic thoughts thrive in clutter. A Machiavellian mind is simple, sharp, and efficient. The fewer things you focus on, the more powerful each thought becomes. You must train yourself to focus on what matters and eliminate everything that doesn't. Reduce mental clutter. Reduce meaningless decisions. Reduce unnecessary commitments. A simplified mind is a purified mind. The third program is future orientation. Toxic thoughts keep you trapped in the past. Old wounds, old failures, old mistakes, old insecurities. But powerful minds rewrite their attention toward the future. They think in terms of direction, not history. They think in terms of trajectory, not trauma. Your focus determines your emotional state. If your mind constantly revisits the past, you will constantly revisit pain. But if your mind stays anchored to where you're going, your thoughts align with growth. You must consistently remind yourself, where am I going? Who am I becoming? What am I building? Every time your mind drifts into toxic memory, redirect it toward a future vision so strong that the past becomes irrelevant. The fourth program is rational dominance. Emotional impulses often generate toxic thoughts. A Machiavellian mind uses logic to neutralize emotion. When a toxic thought appears, "I'm not good enough, I'll fail, I can't do this," you must analyze it with cold rationality. Ask, is this thought based on facts or fear? Is it grounded in reality or reaction? Is there evidence supporting it, or is it an emotional illusion? Logic dismantles toxic thoughts the way sunlight dissolves shadows. The moment your rational mind steps in, the emotional toxicity loses its foundation. This program trains your brain to respond with reason, not panic. The fifth program is neutral observation, the ability to view your thoughts without judgment. Most people react to every thought as if it's a crisis, but you must learn to treat thoughts as mental events, passing images, temporary impulses, momentary signals. Observe them the way a scientist studies data: detached, curious, unemotional. When you stop labeling thoughts as good or bad, they stop controlling you. You simply observe, assess, and dismiss. This creates psychological distance, which makes toxic thoughts powerless. The sixth program is positive constraints. While the term sounds soft, the actual concept is ruthless. You create rules that force your mind into strength. For example, no negative self-talk, no replaying past failures, no mentally rehearsing worst-case scenarios, no emotional spiraling beyond 60 seconds, no inner narratives that contradict my goals. These rules are not for comfort, they are for control. They structure your mental environment so tightly that toxicity cannot grow. Like Machiavelli said, good order produces stability, disorder produces rebellion. The seventh program is mental fasting. Just as the body benefits from periods without food, the mind benefits from periods without external stimulation. Too much input floods the brain. Silence, solitude, and stillness reset your mental chemistry. They allow your mind to clear itself, reorganize, and strengthen. Mental fasting cuts off the noise and gives your inner world room to breathe. Toxic thoughts cannot thrive in a mind that regularly detoxes from distraction. The eighth program is internal reward reinforcement. Toxic thoughts often stem from feeling powerless or stagnant. You must counter that by rewarding yourself for discipline, consistency, and progress. When your brain associates strength with pleasure, it will begin generating thoughts aligned with growth instead of destruction. You are teaching your nervous system that discipline is satisfying, that clarity is rewarding, that progress is addictive. Over time, your mind naturally starts producing empowering thoughts because they trigger emotional reward loops. The ninth program is identity-based micro-actions. These are small daily behaviors that reinforce the strong identity you're building. 1 minute of discipline, 1 completed task, 1 moment of self-control, 1 refusal to indulge a negative thought. Each micro-action strengthens your internal architecture. Each one becomes proof that you are in control. And with enough proof, toxic thoughts no longer feel believable. They feel incompatible with the person you've become. The 10th program, perhaps the most Machiavellian of all, is mental sovereignty. This is the belief that your mind belongs only to you. Not to your past, not to your fears, not to society, not to people who underestimated you, not to old trauma, not to insecurity. When you fully embrace this sovereignty, toxic thoughts become foreign invaders, not internal truths, and you reject them immediately, instinctively, ruthlessly. Rewiring your mind is not a gentle process. It is reconstruction. It is war. You are tearing down old structures and building new ones. But once these programs are installed, toxic thoughts cannot survive. Not because you resist them, but because they no longer fit the architecture of who you are. Section 9. Unbreakable mental control. The final shift that makes your mind your servant, not your master. There comes a point on this path, a point most people never reach, where your relationship with your own mind transforms completely. You stop trying to manage your thoughts. You stop trying to fix your thoughts. You stop trying to fight your thoughts. Instead, you become the commander of your thoughts. You become the architect, the ruler, the sovereign. At this level, the mind no longer drags you. It obeys you. It no longer overwhelms you. It serves you. This is the highest psychological power a human can obtain, and it is the one thing that permanently eliminates toxic thinking. Machiavelli would call this il dominio interno, the internal dominion, total inner rule. To reach this point, you must first understand the fundamental truth. Your mind is a tool, not a temple. It exists to serve your goals, not to dictate your emotions, not to decide your worth, not to push you into spirals. Weak men worship their minds. They submit to their thoughts. They treat every feeling as sacred, every doubt as prophecy, every fear as a command. Powerful men do the opposite. They use their mind, they shape it, they direct it, they command it with precision. That is why they move through life with clarity, stability, and force. The first step toward this dominance is separating your identity from your inner voice. You must stop saying, "I think," and start saying, "My mind produced a thought." That distance is everything. It is the psychological space in which you can analyze, reject, or redirect any thought without becoming it. This makes you untouchable. It prevents your mind from hijacking your emotions. It prevents toxic thoughts from slipping into your identity. It makes you the judge, not the prisoner. The second step is establishing a chain of command inside your brain. Most people have no hierarchy in their mind. Every thought has equal priority. Fear speaks and they obey. Doubt speaks and they obey. Anxiety speaks and they obey. You must break this pattern by creating a dominant internal voice. Your strategic voice, your higher self, your commander. This voice issues orders. It sets the tone. It determines what thoughts matter and what thoughts are irrelevant. When your dominant voice speaks, everything else becomes background noise. This is the voice of discipline, clarity, and purpose. You must feed this voice daily until it becomes the primary authority inside you. The third step is neutralizing emotional interference. Emotional turbulence is what gives toxic thoughts their power. Without emotion, negative thoughts collapse. They lose intensity. They lose urgency. You must train yourself to feel emotions without surrendering to them. When anger rises, you observe it. When fear rises, you analyze it. When insecurity rises, you separate from it. This level of emotional detachment does not make you cold. It makes you controlled. The person who controls their emotions controls their mind, and the person who controls their mind controls their world. The fourth step is developing mental redirection. Toxic thoughts cannot survive long if you immediately redirect your focus to a higher priority. A strong mind does not argue with darkness. It shifts toward light. But this shift must be intentional. You must develop default redirections. A goal you visualize, a vision you repeat, a thought that strengthens you, a task that grounds you. Redirection is not denial. It is choosing where your attention goes. Your attention is your power. The mind follows attention the way soldiers follow a general. Redirect it with authority, and your mind falls in line. The fifth step is thought replacement. Your brain cannot hold two opposing beliefs at the same time. When you deliberately introduce a strong, empowering thought, it automatically weakens or replaces the toxic one. This is why you must cultivate dominant inner beliefs, beliefs about your strength, your resilience, your discipline, your destiny. These beliefs form a protective mental framework. Toxic thoughts cannot penetrate them. They collide with them and fall apart. The sixth step is mental conditioning through repetition. Your mind becomes whatever you feed it consistently, not occasionally, consistently. Weak people rehearse their fears. Powerful people rehearse their strength. You must repeat the thoughts you want to define you. I am disciplined. I am unmoved by emotion. I finish what I start. I control my focus. I am calm under pressure. I do not break. Over time, these thoughts stop being sentences. They become identity. And identity creates automatic psychological behavior. Toxic thoughts have no place inside an identity built on power. The seventh step is visual authority. The mind responds strongly to imagery. When you consistently visualize yourself acting with strength, calmness, and clarity, your brain begins adjusting to that image as your default identity. You must envision yourself as the ruler of your mind, a calm strategist, a composed warrior, a disciplined sovereign. This mental imagery rewires your neural pathways. It makes toxic thoughts incompatible with your self-image. The eighth step is behavioral assertion. Every time you act with strength, especially when you don't feel strong, you train your mind to obey you. Action is dominance. Action is proof. Action destroys internal resistance. When you wake up early, your mind learns, I move when I say move. When you finish a task, your mind learns, I follow through. When you resist emotional impulses, your mind learns, I am not controlled. Each action is a command, and your mind obeys. Over time, your brain stops producing toxic thoughts because it knows you won't bow to them. The ninth step is internal sovereignty, the final shift. This is the belief, not the hope, not the wish, that your mind is your domain, your territory, your kingdom. You do not allow intruders, you do not negotiate with weakness, you do not entertain insecurity, you do not accept mental narratives that contradict your direction. Internal sovereignty is psychological royalty. It is the absolute conviction that nothing inside you has more authority than you. And once you claim this sovereignty, your mind submits. Toxic thoughts become powerless. They appear, but you don't react. They whisper, but you don't respond. They fade because you don't feed them. This is the point where you become unstoppable, not because life becomes easier, but because your mind becomes disciplined, strategic, and loyal to your purpose. You are no longer shaken by doubt. You are no longer dragged by fear. You are no longer trapped by overthinking. You walk with mental silence, mental sharpness, and mental command. Section 10. The final ascension. Building a mind that cannot be broken, disturbed, or controlled by anyone. You have walked through the inner battlefield. You have confronted the origins of your toxic thoughts. You have dismantled the habits that fed them. You have learned to detach, to build mental boundaries, to rewire your identity, to command your inner world with sovereign authority. But now comes the final ascension, the moment where everything you have learned merges into one truth. A mind becomes unbreakable only when it becomes self-governing. Not influenced by environment, not shaped by emotion, not dependent on validation, not controlled by fear. A mind that stands alone, above the chaos, above the noise, above the opinions of others. This is where you rise into complete mental independence. The state Machiavelli believed only the strongest rulers ever reach. An unbreakable mind is built on one foundation, self-discipline, but not the common version of discipline people talk about. Not the wake-up early cliché, not the work harder speech. I'm talking about the discipline of ruling your inner world, the discipline to stay calm when others panic, the discipline to remain focused when others scatter, the discipline to think clearly while others drown in emotion. This is the deepest form of discipline, the discipline of awareness, intention, and control. The discipline to choose your thoughts instead of letting your thoughts choose you. The first pillar of this ascension is mental stillness on command. When your mind becomes truly strong, you can silence it at will. You can reduce the noise to nothing, not through meditation or ritual, but through authority. You tell your mind to stop spiraling, and it stops. You tell it to focus, and it focuses. You tell it to rest, and it rests. This is the point where your mind listens to you instantly because you have trained it like a warrior trains his reflexes. Stillness becomes your weapon. Instead of being shaken by challenges, you remain centered, composed, unreadable. Others react, you respond. Others fear, you assess. Others break, you remain intact. The second pillar is emotional invulnerability, not numbness, not suppression, invulnerability. This means your emotions pass through you without anchoring into you. You can feel pain without becoming pain. You can feel fear without obeying fear. You can feel anger without losing control. You can feel sadness without collapsing. This ability makes you psychologically untouchable. Nobody can manipulate you. Nobody can provoke you. Nobody can sway your decisions by appealing to your emotions. Your emotional world becomes regulated, balanced, sovereign. And with emotional invulnerability comes a deeper truth. People lose their power over you. The third pillar of the final ascension is intellectual sovereignty, the ability to think independently even when the world pushes conformity. A weak mind absorbs ideas without questioning. A strong mind evaluates them, but an unbreakable mind filters at a higher level. It dismisses anything that contradicts its personal code. You do not absorb narratives built on fear, limitation, or dependency. You do not adopt opinions from people who haven't earned the right to influence you. You do not internalize criticism from those who have accomplished nothing. You think long-term, strategically, and objectively. Your thoughts are chosen with precision, and this gives you an advantage almost nobody has: clarity in a world addicted to confusion. The fourth pillar is identity certainty. This is when you know exactly who you are and who you are becoming. You no longer question your worth. You no longer wonder whether you're capable. You no longer define yourself by failure, rejection, or the past. Your identity becomes rooted in discipline, vision, resilience, and self-respect. And here's the psychological shift. Once your identity is certain, toxic thoughts cannot coexist with it. A strong identity filters them out automatically. They dissolve the moment they arise because they contradict the core of who you are. You do not fight them. They simply no longer align with your internal structure. The fifth pillar is inner loyalty, the refusal to betray yourself. Most toxic thoughts survive because people abandon themselves. They say one thing, but do another. They promise discipline, but act in weakness. They set goals, but indulge in laziness. Every act of self-betrayal deepens internal conflict. Every act of integrity strengthens internal peace. Inner loyalty means that your actions match your identity. You say what you mean, and you mean what you say. You set standards, and you uphold them. You commit to goals, and you honor them. You become someone you trust. And once you trust yourself fully, your mind becomes calm, aligned, and unbreakable. The sixth pillar is mastery of attention. Your mind goes where your attention goes. If you place your attention on insecurity, your mind will produce fear. If you place it on goals, your mind will produce strategy. If you place it on discipline, your mind will produce strength. This is why attention is the highest form of mental currency. You must control where it flows. You must direct it deliberately. When you master attention, you master your mind. And when you master your mind, you master your life. The seventh pillar is rejection of external chaos. An unbreakable mind does not absorb every emotion from the world. It does not internalize drama, disputes, gossip, or negativity. It doesn't attach significance to noise. It doesn't let chaos enter its structure. External chaos remains external. You observe it, but do not invite it inside. You interact with the world without letting the world distort your inner stability. This is the mindset of the powerful, calm in storms, unmoved in conflict, aligned in uncertainty. The eighth pillar is ruthless psychological pruning. A strong mind regularly eliminates patterns that weaken it. You cut off relationships that drain you. You cut off habits that sabotage you. You cut off thoughts that distract you. You cut off influences that poison you. And you do it without hesitation, without guilt, without emotional attachment. You prune your mental environment the way a strategist removes liabilities from his kingdom. The fewer weak links inside your mind, the stronger your internal infrastructure becomes. The ninth pillar is inner silence as strength. When your mind becomes powerful, silence becomes your default. Not because you lack thoughts, but because your thoughts are organized, calm, efficient. Internal quiet